Hello, welcome to this channel, and today we will dive deep into the heartbreaking aftermath of Xander Kyriakis' crumbling marriage and explore what the future might hold for this complicated character as he navigates the devastating waters of divorce and potential new romance. Xander's marriage reaches breaking point. The foundation of Xander and Sarah's relationship has completely shattered following Xander's shocking confession about brutally attacking Philip Kyriakis. This revelation became the final straw for Sarah, who had already endured countless betrayals, deceptions, and broken promises throughout their tumultuous marriage. During the explosive October 23rd episode, Sarah made it abundantly clear that she could no longer tolerate the endless cycle of disappointment and pain that had become their relationship. The trust between them has been so thoroughly destroyed that Sarah now views her husband as irredeemable, someone who has crossed moral boundaries that she simply cannot forgive. Without hesitation, Sarah immediately contacted Justin Kyriakis to initiate divorce proceedings, signaling that this separation is not just another temporary break, but potentially the permanent end of their marriage. Sarah's final decision. The emotional toll of Xander's actions has fundamentally transformed how Sarah perceives her husband, with her now describing him as pure evil. Words that demonstrate just how far their relationship has fallen from the hopeful beginning they once shared. Sarah's determination to move forward with the divorce represents more than just legal paperwork. It symbolizes her complete rejection of who Xander has become and her refusal to continue sacrificing her own well-being and that of their daughter Victoria for a man she believes is beyond saving. This decision will undoubtedly send shockwaves through Xander's world, making him confront the harsh reality that his pattern of lies and violent behavior has cost him the woman he loves most. The finality of Sarah's choice leaves Xander standing at a crossroads, forced to reckon with the consequences of his actions and contemplate what comes next in his life now that his marriage is effectively over. Could Xander and Sarah ever reconcile? While soap opera history teaches us that even the most broken couples can sometimes find their way back to each other after catastrophic conflicts, the current situation between Xander and Sarah appears exceptionally dire. The depth of betrayal and the severity of Xander's confession about beating Philip have created wounds that may prove impossible to heal, at least in the foreseeable future. Something fundamental has broken between them that goes beyond typical marital problems. Sarah's trust in Xander's character and her belief that he could change have been completely obliterated. However, in the unpredictable world of Salem, nothing is ever truly permanent, and circumstances could potentially shift years down the line if Xander demonstrates genuine, sustained transformation. For now, though, reconciliation seems like an impossibility, and both characters appear destined to explore separate paths forward. Xander's journey toward moving on. In the wake of Sarah's devastating rejection, spoilers strongly suggest that Xander will attempt to pick up the pieces of his shattered life by potentially pursuing romantic connections with other women. This decision to move forward would represent Xander's attempt to prove to himself that he can exist beyond his failed marriage and perhaps find someone who accepts him despite his numerous flaws and questionable past. The emotional vulnerability created by Sarah's rejection places Xander in a particularly susceptible position where he might make impulsive romantic decisions driven more by pain and the desire to forget than by genuine connection. His journey forward will likely be complicated by lingering feelings for Sarah and the challenge of finding someone who can handle the complicated, morally ambiguous man that Xander has proven himself to be. Gwen returns as potential love interest. One of the most intriguing possibilities for Xander's romantic future involves his former flame Gwen von Leuschner, who has already reconnected with Xander during his marital troubles. Unlike Sarah, who has always maintained high moral standards and judged Xander harshly for his mistakes, Gwen operates from a completely different perspective. She understands darkness because she has embraced her own complicated past. Gwen's acceptance and forgiveness of Xander's flaws could prove incredibly appealing to someone who has spent so long being condemned and rejected by the supposedly good people in Salem. The two share a history of being outcasts and making morally questionable choices, which creates a foundation of understanding that Xander never quite achieved with the judgmental Sarah. Gwen has already demonstrated her interest in capitalizing on Xander's vulnerable emotional state, and with her substantial von Leuschner fortune, she now approaches him as an equal rather than someone he needs to impress. Why Gwen could be perfect for Xander. Gwen represents a romantic option that would allow Xander to completely stop apologizing for who he is and instead embrace his authentic self without constant criticism. She experienced her own devastating betrayal when her husband Dimitri cheated with her best friend Leo, giving her unique insight into the pain of spousal betrayal that Xander is currently experiencing. This shared experience of betrayal could create an emotional bond between Gwen and Xander that goes beyond superficial attraction. Additionally, pursuing Gwen would represent Xander choosing a completely different path, one where he stops trying to live up to impossible standards set by people like Sarah and instead finds companionship with someone who accepts his darkness. However, whether Xander fully commits to Gwen or simply uses her as a temporary escape from his pain remains to be seen, and Sarah would undoubtedly feel threatened if her ex-husband reunited with the woman who once terrorized her. Gabby Hernandez as unexpected possibility. Another fascinating romantic scenario involves the potential for something to develop between Xander and Gabby Hernandez, particularly after Philip inevitably discovers Gabby's schemes and betrayals. Gabby has been working with Tony DiMera to take down the Titan-DiMera merger by using her charm to create conflict between the Kyriakis brothers. While her initial interactions with Xander were purely manipulative, she has unexpectedly found herself appreciating how fatherhood has transformed him into a more compassionate person. During the crisis when Gabby's daughter Ariana went missing, Xander showed genuine concern and offered substantial help, revealing a side of himself that Gabby had never witnessed before. These tender moments created an unexpected connection between two people who previously had little use for each other. Complex dynamics with Gabby. The situation becomes even more complicated because Gabby's scheme involves seducing both Xander and Philip, but sources suggest she actually falls in love with Philip rather than Xander. When Philip eventually uncovers Gabby's betrayal, particularly her involvement in planting surveillance devices and her partnership with Tony DiMera, he will likely end their relationship immediately. This rejection could leave Gabby heartbroken and vulnerable, creating circumstances where she and Xander might find solace in each other as two people who have been rejected by those they cared about. Xander might prove more forgiving of Gabby's scheming than Philip would be, especially since Xander understands what it means to make questionable choices and then regret them. However, sources indicate that Xander remains emotionally invested in Sarah despite their separation, making him unlikely to pursue anything serious with Gabby in the immediate future. Philip's role in future drama. Philip Kyriakis himself plays a crucial role in this unfolding romantic drama, as his actions directly contributed to the destruction of Xander and Sarah's marriage. According to spoilers, Philip will attempt to make amends and advocate on Sarah's behalf, hoping to repair the damage his lies caused to his brother's relationship. However, Philip's own romantic entanglement with Gabby complicates matters considerably, especially once he discovers that their entire relationship was built on manipulation and corporate espionage. The revelation of Gabby's betrayal will devastate Philip, potentially making him more sympathetic to Xander's own experience of spousal betrayal. These shared wounds could either bring the brothers closer together or drive them further apart, depending on how they navigate the complicated aftermath of their romantic disasters. What this means for Xander's character development. This period of romantic upheaval represents a critical juncture in Xander's character evolution, forcing him to confront fundamental questions about who he is and who he wants to become. The complete collapse of his marriage to Sarah eliminates the motivation he once had to be good, according to Salem's moral standards. Xander now faces a choice. He can continue attempting to reform himself and prove he deserves redemption, or he can embrace his darker nature and accept that he will never fit into polite society. His romantic choices will reflect which path he ultimately chooses. Pursuing Gwen would suggest acceptance of his flawed nature, while attempting to maintain higher standards might indicate continued desire for redemption. However, given that Xander has entered therapy and is genuinely attempting to change despite Sarah's rejection, his future remains genuinely uncertain. The unpredictable future. As these romantic storylines continue to develop, viewers can expect numerous twists, turns, and unexpected connections that will reshape Xander's life in Salem. Whether he ultimately ends up with Gwen, Gabby, or someone entirely new, The journey forward promises to be emotionally charged and filled with the kind of dramatic complications that make soap operas endlessly entertaining. The writers have positioned Xander at a fascinating crossroads where his choices will define not just his romantic future but his fundamental identity as a character. Fans should prepare themselves for an emotional roller coaster as Xander navigates heartbreak, attempts at moving forward, and the complicated process of rebuilding his life after losing the woman he considered his soulmate.